Hi guys, welcome back to Tom Mods Things. So we've taken a little break. We've kind of cleared the head and everything. We've kind of taken a little bit of relaxation, a little bit of a mental break, and we are back at it. So those of you that saw the last video will have seen that we were kind of talking through what we could do on the various projects that we've got. Project Saxo sitting right behind me here, and part of that sort of conversation was that we were going to be sorting the audio and the visual of both the Saxo and the 106 for next year's reunion show. We're still undecided on the third thing, which was to do with whether one, we get a new project car that we unveil at next year's show, or we rebuild the Porsche Cayman that's out the front at the moment into something completely new and unveil that instead. So that decision's still not been made. However, what we are going to be doing today is we're going to be making a start on the audio side of things on Project Saxo. So let me flip you around, put you inside, and then we'll talk through what we have to do. Right, so Project Saxo looking sick with this car. I mean, yeah, look at that, just nuts. Just doesn't pick it up really on pictures and cameras, but when it's under this sort of crazy light and stuff, it just goes nuts. Anyway, right, so as you can see, the interior is looking a bit stripped at the moment. So we are still running into an issue with it running at the moment. So it runs and everything, but the rev and the speedo dials have switched. So now the revs is on the speedo is on the revs. Yeah, it's really, really weird. It's just sort of happened. Everything else seems to work fine. But just those two things seem to have swapped. So we need to work out what it is. I'm hoping it's just a ground somewhere that's kind of come loose. But at the moment, we've kind of gone through all sorts of stuff to try and rectify it, including sort of replacing the ICV valve because the revs are also kind of a little bit high. So that's kind of sorted, kind of not. But the sort of swap over between those two dials is still an issue. So still got to work through that side of things. And then the other issue that we had was that the central locking was going completely nuts. So as you can see, both door cards are off at the moment because we've been messing around with the door locks. Now we've managed to get this one freed back up again. So the main thing that we've got is that you can now come this side and you can open the door again, which is great. The lock and stuff in there is still playing funny buggers, so what we're going to do is we're going to bypass it, I think. But you can open it with the trusty key on the outside. So that side of things all sorted. But what it does mean is that we had to remove the door cards, as we see over here. So these were definitely on the list to replace. That never got kind of done sort of back when this car was first built. But there is definitely some things on here which are not sort of up to standard, and we definitely need to change. So there's a couple of tweaks that have been made to this. I think these are early VTS door cards, which is why they've kind of got the sort of felt lining through the centre, sort of this sort of material, because that kind of got dropped off on the later models where it was just fully plastic, which is cool because it means that we can basically just retrim this whole centre section in a different material, which is kind of nice. So yeah, it's kind of all peeling away. So I think what we can do is start to sort of take it up from the corners, and then basically we can just replace it. Main changes are we've got an additional tweeter that's been kind of drilled in up the top section up here. This is, what's that brand? Audio something or other. I think that sort of it's okay really from a quality point of view, but it feels a bit weird. It just kind of been sat up the top here, so we need to change that. And then the main thing that's kind of not great is that the crossovers have just been dumped in the door cards, and so they were sort of fixed, as you can see there, with a couple of screws, but they're just sort of in there rattling around, which definitely needs to change. So right, so plan of action as to what we do moving forward. So as it stands, the only speakers that we've got in the front are these kind of upgraded audio system ones in the front here, and then we've also got these sort of tweeters that kind of just sit up the side here as well. So what we're going to do, and what I think we're going to try and do, is we're going to cut away a lot of this section here and rebuild it completely. We've kind of got the speaker that's positioned here, but I think we're going to replace it. So what I'm thinking is we can either go one sort of 8-inch sub, some components, and then kind of do the crossover and stuff down here behind like a perspex sort of sheet, which we can then backlight, or I'm thinking that we just get a load of sort of 6.5 inch components, and then we put all of our mids all across the bottom, have our sort of tweeters and stuff up the top, leave sort of a sub and stuff off for the door completely, and just have that as what we do in the rear of the car. And then we do the same with the crossover, where we have it behind a sort of perspex sheet. So if you'd imagine this sort of line travels all the way across here, and then maybe 2 or 3 speakers across the bottom here. So I think what we're going to do first is we're going to get some paper, and we're just going to sort of sketch everything out, and then line everything up as to how we want it to look. Right, so now that's removed, we're going to drill out all the rivets on the back of it to remove this kind of centre panel, and then after that we can look to recover it. Right guys, so then show you what we're left with. So we have taken the whole inner panel out of this. So basically what you saw me doing there was there's a load of kind of like plastic sort of weld, plastic rivet kind of tabs around the back of this, which basically hold everything in place. So if we flip this around, you can see them by kind of all these holes here. So these are like heat stakes, effectively, plastic heat stakes. So when the panel kind of goes on, they're like a big pin, and then they kind of get heated up with almost like a soldering iron really over the top, which then melts the plastic and pushes it out, so basically creating like a rivet, but using the actual material itself rather than having to add anything else in like a normal rivet where you kind of add a piece of metal in. This is all kind of molded into the whole sort of big injection molding, which is what this large part is for the door card. And so what we're left with is this, which is like the inner covering piece. So this is kind of like what you would typically get if you were to take your roof liner off. So it's this kind of composite-y kind of material. I don't actually know exactly what sort of material it is, but it's almost like cardboardy, kind of like polystyrene, like high density foam type stuff. So that kind of gives you the substrate. Again, you've got kind of these little heat stakes. This is kind of what I was just explaining there. So these are like smaller ones which are heat staked. The kind of surround for the door sort of hinge and opening mechanism. So this is kind of staked on, which means that this is kind of fixed to the two things. So we'll have to do the same thing again, where we drill out these small heat stakes on the back so that we can remove this plastic piece. But what this has done now is, because we've got it as a separate piece, we can start to pull away the material, which had obviously started to pull away anyway. We'll probably save this. I don't know, somebody might be interested in this, so we'll do what we can to kind of keep it and leave it kind of undamaged, because I'm sure there's people that like pay to have sort of a spare material of this kind of Mark 1 VTS, whatever it is, tiger stripe type stuff. So anyway, we'll do what we can. But then what we're left with underneath is this kind of like weird yellowy kind of, it feels slightly sort of tacky, and effectively what this is the spray-on adhesive that they use for attaching the upholstery to the sort of main substrate. As you can see around the areas where it started to pull away, you can see there's actually not a lot, and if I get the camera on there, not a lot of material kind of in these areas, so that's kind of why it was pulling away. So what we need to do, which is what we did on the Porsche headliner, is once we've pulled all this material off, we'll effectively need to take this outside and just basically blitz and scrape away all of this sort of old adhesive, using kind of a sort of wire brush effectively over the top of it to just kind of remove all of it to the level where this is, where it's all kind of nice and smooth, ready to accept either sort of speaker sort of grills and fiberglass, depending on if we build all this up, or just to recover it in a new material, which again is what we're looking to potentially do as well. So I'm going to crack on, get this one done. This is door card number 1, so we still have the driver's side to do, and I will catch up with you once we've kind of removed all the material and got everything set up. Right, so I'm umming and ahhing about what we're going to do with this. So I've got some 160 kind of mil speaker grills to kind of give me a little bit of a template as to kind of the speaker sizes. We're kind of using this as a template because I just quite like the size of them, and they're a lot bigger than the original ones that would go in here, which I think are about sort of 100 mil or something. But in essence, we're kind of looking at this. Looks like it's, yeah, definitely going to kind of fit with what we want to do. But as you kind of work your way through sort of this area here in particular, if we were to kind of put 3 in a row across this side, it does mean that we're going to have to bulk up a lot of the section above this area, which I mean I'm not totally against, to be honest, but it's just something to bear in mind. And then I think with this area we're going to kind of build it out and then cut kind of a different larger aperture in here, and then we're just going to have all of the electronics sat behind it and all backlit. So if you think with these current crossovers, and we're not going to use these, but keep this in mind, so if this was kind of sort of all out of the case and stuff, all nice cabling behind like a perspex cover in this area, I think that's kind of the look that we're kind of going to go for with those. So I think that's going to work. That's just going to require this to be cut out and then sort of reshaped. And then I think, yeah, with this we're going to kind of, I think we can keep one at the front. We'll kind of build it up a little bit just to give it a little bit more depth. And then the same as we kind of come across here and then up here, we're going to need to do a lot more sort of work on this top section across here, kind of basically blocking the pocket as it is at the moment, but I think that's going to work. So 3 across here. The only other idea that kind of looked at is I was searching the old interwebs and came up with these ones that I saw that somebody had created. So effectively they've done sort of the larger speaker at the front here, and if it will hopefully zoom in, come on, there we go. So as you can see, they've kind of got the large speaker at the front. That looks like it's probably like an 8-inch sub. And then they've got kind of the component sitting above it. And then they've done kind of a similar thing here where they've opened up the pocket on that side. And so then when you start to look at that, what it looks like on the actual car, you can see there it kind of starts to look OEM. They've also done some reshaping work around this front edge here as well, but I mean that's the kind of look that I think we're going to kind of go for from the point of view of like finish and stuff, with this area here, kind of the little cover and stuff with the perspex. I'm kind of undecided really with the sort of front on this. I mean it does look great, to be honest. They've done a brilliant job, as you can see there, with the sort of wood that they've done for this section around here and over here, and then they've just started to blend it in with one another. So yeah, as a product, as a part, I think that looks great, and definitely something that we can kind of work with for some inspiration. But I think we're going to go with maybe the 3 across the bottom, the 3 sort of 6.5-inch components, and then kind of have our tweeters and everything up this top section here, and then we'll just have this back section kind of backlit with the perspex box. But anyway. Right, so for that I think I'm going to need a few supplies, so I'm going to definitely get on eBay, I think, to order some. What I'll do is I'll get some sort of 165, 160 mil sort of spacer pieces, so that means I don't have to cut them. Basically, it'll just be a lot easier, and they're really cheap. And then I can use those basically to mock up with some hot glue and stuff, kind of where I want those speaker positions to be on this door card. And then after that, we can then start properly cutting things up. In the meantime, we're going to be looking at material that we can use to recover those inner sort of sections. And then, yeah, as I say, start to scrape off all of that excess adhesive so that we can apply some new stuff and get those finished up and sorted and looking great. Right guys, so we are a few days on, and we've had some bits turn up, so we're going to be cracking on with a few things today. Let me just fly around and we'll show you what has happened. Right, so what we've had turn up is we've got some spacer rings. Pick these up because it's going to be a lot quicker to knock stuff together than having to cut rings and stuff out yourself, and because they're so cheap and stuff, may as well just pick them up. Then we've got these pods as well. We saw these and thought they were just interesting, so we're going to maybe, rather than them all being sort of together, maybe the front one's going to be a bit more of an angle, and then the two afterwards are then going to kind of follow suit. So what we're going to start with, I think, is starting to chop this up. So what we need to do is kind of create a cut that's kind of all the way down here to open up this pocket area. The bit that kind of in between here seems to be sort of a join in between sort of a rear substrate and then this kind of top overall piece. We've obviously taken the grill out of this side because we're going to be having that pod that's kind of sat in front. So we're going to cut sort of all this out, I think, and then we're going to lay in a sort of a substrate piece, which is then what all of our speakers and grills are going to mount to, and then we should be able to then go from there. Right, so to start with, we are taking our kind of loose positions as to kind of where these speakers are going. We've got this one up front, which we've just kind of fixed in with a fixing for the moment until it kind of gets bonded in. And then we've got kind of our two outer rings that are going to be going in these spaces. Once those rings kind of get screwed in place on top of here, this will kind of create a bit more structure through this section. But really what we were trying to do is just kind of create the pockets that the things are going to kind of sit behind before we start to build like a sort of skeleton of what the system's going to look like. And then after that we can start to lay sort of fiberglass and stuff over the top of it, just to start to bring it in line with the overall aesthetic of what we're trying to achieve with it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to screw down kind of our adapter pieces on top of it, and then just start to bridge the gap and start gluing some pieces in place so that then we can use that as our base moving forwards. Right, so our pods are kind of loosely mounted in. We've got this one 2 screws, this one single fixing, but as you can see, got a bit of a gap going on underneath. So what we're going to be doing is cutting off a couple of bits of the sort of excess plastic, and we're going to start gluing this into place to create that kind of skeleton underneath each of the speakers, after which then we can start to look into kind of permanent fixes, and then starting to glass over the top and sand bits down and cut bits out. So going to get that fully built, and I'll catch you once that is all been put in place. Right, so there we go guys, that's number 1, kind of glued, it's just sitting outside, and now we are just making a start on number 2, kind of got everything in place as we need to, and then yeah, just waiting for the glue to set at the moment. We've got these door pockets that we need to cut out, but I'm just starting to maybe rethink what we do with this. We were going to have the crossovers kind of sat behind with the perspex sheet. What I'm thinking we might do instead is actually just cut this whole aperture out, and this will be where the TV fits. In here, otherwise we'll be having like TV screens kind of in this sort of door card area up here or over here, but I think maybe a screen could look good here, and then the crossovers will kind of sit kind of mounted onto the these pieces once they've been kind of recovered. Not too sure yet. We're going to leave cutting this out just for the meantime until we've kind of made a decision on that, but this is kind of where we wanted to start, so that we could at least get everything kind of mounted in place and start to build things up, so that when we order speakers we can make sure that we've kind of got enough depth. I think from looking at the spec sheets of what I'm considering putting into this build, this depth is going to be more than sufficient for what we require, and then once we bridge kind of by coming over the top of this, that's going to be kind of perfect for that. Right, so that's both door cards kind of built up with all the speaker pods and stuff in there as they needed to be. As I say, we're going to leave these pockets, I think, for the moment, where we've just kind of drawn out, because we're going to pick up some TV screens first, and then we'll see what kind of space that we need for them. So yeah, we're just waiting for all the glue to set and stuff, and then we should be able to start putting some more sort of hardcore resin and fiberglass over the top. We'll also need to build up some small supports on either side, so that we can lay a nice piece over the top of all of it, so that it can kind of be shaped as we go along. So I think for the moment that's probably what we're going to... Oh geez, the light's a bit funny in here. There we go. So that's probably what we are going to end with on this video. So we've made a start on the audio on those door cards. We've also done some work under the bonnet. We've got new idle control valve, so that's now idling correctly, and then we've also done a new induction kit on there as well, so that's all tidied that up. Separately, we got the 106 running properly again, so that turned out to be a wire that had been kind of severed, that used to go to the reverse light on the back that we'd kind of made, and it had kind of fallen out of its mounts that I'd put in there and rubbed against the tyre, which kind of went through until the copper wire, and then two things shorted, and that effectively took out the instrument cluster. So we've since stripped that wiring out, redid it, then we've replaced the fuse that had blown, and then it is now up and running again. So that's been working correctly. We've gone over to 50 supercars, which will be probably in a video after this one, where we took it there to sort of the local sort of place with one of the local car clubs for a bit of a breakfast meet, and it went down an absolute treat, as always. And then driving it through all the nice quaint villages of Wiltshire afterwards with all the slightly older generation sort of tutting away was interesting to say the least. But I absolutely love it. I love that sort of stuff, and love driving it around as well. It's just hilarious. So yeah, so anyway, stay tuned. This audio stuff's now properly happening. We're going to be picking up speakers now. We're going to be setting them in, and we're going to be doing a load of fiberglass work, and then taking you along for the ride. Again, any pointers and stuff, if you see me doing work and you've done audio stuff before like this, and you go, no Tom, what you're doing is rubbish, you need to be doing it a different way, and this is the way that you need to be doing it, by all means chuck me a DM, chuck it in the comments. I always look over that sort of stuff. I don't know what I'm doing with this, I'm just kind of making it up as I go along. So if I can gain some additional knowledge from you guys that maybe done it before, then I'm fully open to that. So yeah, don't hesitate to chuck that in there.